5 years ago, 346 people were killed in 2 crashes involving Boeing 737 MAX planes within the span of just 5 months. Today, a man responsible for the construction of these planes decided to expose the company that he worked for, but before he could, he was found dead. The big question being whether he did it himself or whether it was staged. And the truth is, we may never get an official answer because the US doesn't want you to know what actually happened because they need Boeing. Why? Well, I'm going to explain every single detail in this video, and in my quest to find the answer to this one simple question, I've discovered the dark truth that Boeing would rather you not know. Behind the flights you take to go on fun vacations and business trips is a company that has claimed millions of innocent lives throughout countless different methods. And judging by all of the information I've gathered, by the end of this video we could probably come to our own conclusion on what actually happened, because it has been in front of our eyes the entire time. Lion Air Flight 610 was a scheduled domestic flight operated by the Indonesian airline Lion Air. On October 29, 2018, the Boeing 737 MAX 8 aircraft serving the route crashed into the Java Sea shortly after takeoff from Jakarta, Indonesia. Tragically, this catastrophic event claimed the lives of all 189 passengers and crew members on board. The cause of this crash was attributed to a combination of factors, but many of them pointed to the Boeing 737 MAX itself. Issues with the aircraft's automated flight control system known as the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, aka MCAS, were the main culprit. When the 737 MAX 8 was released, Boeing upgraded these planes with brand new, larger, more powerful engines, but in doing so, they also cut costs. With the upgrades to the MAX 8, the center of gravity shifted forward as a result of the new engines, and instead of making changes to the entire fuselage, they implemented the MCAS system. MCAS was designed to prevent the aircraft from going into an uncontrolled freefall, known as a stall, by automatically adjusting the aircraft's angle of attack, which had been increased during takeoff as a result of the new engines. And on Lion Air Flight 610, the MCAS was activated out of nowhere due to faulty sensor data. This led the aircraft's nose being repeatedly pushed down despite the pilot's attempt to correct it, ultimately resulting in loss of control. In addition to the broken software, the build quality of the plane itself was also to blame. Issues relating to the poor build quality of the 737 MAX were reported, highlighting manufacturing defects and quality control lapses in the production of these aircrafts. These deficiencies not only compromised the overall safety and reliability of the aircraft, but also played a role in increasing the challenges faced by pilots in managing critical flight situations. These included concerns about the assembly of various components, wiring issues, and inadequate oversight during the manufacturing process, all of which potentially compromised the overall safety and reliability of the aircraft. The Lion Air Flight 610 crash prompted widespread scrutiny of the Boeing 737 MAX aircraft, and it also raised concerns about the certification process for new aircraft and the role of automation in aviation safety. Investigations into the crash highlighted various systemic failures and led to reforms in aviation regulation and safety procedures. But apparently this crash didn't concern Boeing enough, because just 5 months later, another 737 MAX 8 met a similar fate. Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, a scheduled international passenger flight from Ethiopia to Kenya, met a tragic fate on March 10, 2019. The aircraft involved was again a Boeing 737 MAX 8, the same model as the one involved in the Lion Air Flight 610 crash. Shortly after takeoff, the aircraft encountered difficulties and experienced erratic flight behavior. The first few investigations revealed similarities to the Lion Air crash, particularly concerning the activation of the MCAS system, which again pushed the aircraft's nose down due to faulty sensor data which the pilots could not recover. Despite the pilots' efforts to regain control, Flight 302 crashed near the town of Bishoftu, Ethiopia, just 6 minutes after departing from its original destination. Tragically, all 157 passengers and crew on board lost their lives in this accident. It seems as though Boeing failed to make any positive changes to their aircraft after the tragedy that happened just months prior. The similarities between Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 and Lion Air Flight 610 disasters raised significant concerns about the safety of the Boeing 737 MAX aircraft worldwide. In response, aviation authorities around the globe grounded the entirety of the Boeing 737 MAX fleet. Further investigations into the Ethiopian Airlines crash focused on the aircraft's systems, pilots, training, and maintenance procedures. Just like the Lion Air crash, findings pointed to issues with the MCAS system and concerns about pilot awareness and training regarding the system's operation. The Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 tragedy, occurring so soon after the Lion Air disaster made the skepticism around Boeing's design even worse. So it's clear that Boeing failed to make life-saving changes, even within 5 long months of valuable time that could have been put towards research and development, the kind that would have saved hundreds of lives. But to make matters worse, what if I told you Boeing could have prevented these crashes all along? Until these 2 crashes occurred, the only company to know that the MCAS system even existed was Boeing. Hundreds of airlines around the world who took delivery of the 737 MAX 8 were unaware that MCAS even existed, and in turn, this also meant that thousands of MAX 8 pilots around the world had no idea that MCAS was the system causing problems all along. Prior to the crashes, pilots had been making complaints to their respective airlines about how the planes would sometimes act in unexplainable ways. But at the time, it was dismissed as the fault of other system errors until these 2 horrific crashes revealed the truth about the MCAS system. So why would Boeing keep this secret from the beginning all along? Following the crashes, Boeing denied all wrongdoing. They shifted the blame, even going as far to claim that they had no idea that the MCAS system was unsafe. That was until it was revealed that one of their top test pilots had actually raised numerous concerns about the system to fellow colleagues. In the messages, the pilot, Mark Faulkner, complained that the system known as MCAS was acting unpredictably in a flight simulator, even going as far to say that it was running rampant. To make matters worse, these messages were sent months before the MAX had been officially certified by the Federal Aviation Administration, meaning that Boeing no longer cared about this potential issue. So why did the MAX program have so many issues? Why did Boeing blatantly disregard any issue? Well, the answer to this is simple: money and competition. To understand the problems with Boeing and the MAX program, we first need to cover the aircraft manufacturing market as a whole. In the commercial sector, 4 main companies make almost all of the planes you fly on today: Embraer, Bombardier, Airbus, and Boeing. Now, when it comes to how this market is divided, Embraer and Bombardier are the leaders in regional and business aircraft. Think of planes you'd fly on quick flights or private jets. But they have no influence when it comes to larger aircraft, because this sector is entirely dominated by Airbus and Boeing. While Boeing is based in America, Airbus is based in Europe, and the competition between these companies is unlike anything else on Earth. Imagine this. Pretend you were going to buy a new car, and you only had the choice between 2 companies because they were the only 2 on the entire planet making cars. These 2 companies would do anything they possibly could to stay ahead of the other in order to get you to buy their car. And guess what? This is exactly what is happening in aviation. When any airline around the world wants to buy new planes, they have 2 choices: Boeing or Airbus. So how does this relate to the MAX crashes? Well, back in 2016, when Boeing was creating the MAX program, they were in fierce competition with Airbus because over in Europe, they were also creating a new aircraft, the A320neo. Both the 737 and A320 have been in competition for decades. Both planes are similar in size, both planes have similar interiors, and both planes serve the exact same type of routes. These 2 aircraft and their variations are the most sold planes in the entire world, and they are responsible for most of the flights that you are on every single day. So whoever has the edge here wins the competition for global aircraft manufacturing dominance. When it came to the development of the A320neo, it was flawless. There were little to no issues. It was quieter than other planes, more fuel efficient, and most important of all, cheaper to operate for airlines, which they loved. But as for Boeing, this put them under pressure. When it comes to the aviation industry, it's not like an airline buys 1 plane at a time. They purchase hundreds of them in a single order, being worth hundreds of millions to even billions of dollars. And if Boeing didn't do something soon, well, they'd be left behind. Scrambling to keep up with the competition, Boeing worked to produce the MAX as quickly as possible, striving to minimize costly training for pilots, and in doing so created a flying death trap with the MCAS system as the single bullet in the chamber. But to make matters even worse, they not only hid this truth from the airlines, but they also lied to the Federal Aviation Administration as well. Test pilot Mark Faulkner was the chief technical pilot for the MAX and was in charge of communicating with the FAA group that determined how pilots would be trained before flying it. He helped Boeing convince international regulators that the MAX was safe to fly. In the messages that were leaked, he said that during test flights in 2016, the simulator showed the plane making unexpected movements through a process called trimming. He wrote to a fellow technical pilot at Boeing saying the plane is trimming itself like crazy. And Faulkner even went on to say that he lied to the FAA, saying, "I basically lied to the regulators unknowingly." After hundreds of lives lost, millions of dollars, the grounding of the MAX fleet, and an investigation at the highest level. In 2020 and 2021, airlines around the world allowed these planes to once again take flight after mandatory changes to design and pilot training. And for a while, things began to look good for Boeing. Slowly, trust was being rebuilt. Their stock had begun recovering from a 50% drop until disaster struck once again. On January 5th, 2024, Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 took off from Portland International Airport with 171 passengers and 6 crew on board. Today was a beautiful day for flying. Clear conditions, no bad weather on the radar, and at 5:07 p.m. the plane began its takeoff from the airport. As the plane gains altitude, all is normal. The cabin remains pressurized, people are wearing their seatbelts, and some passengers are already asleep. But as the plane reached 16,000 feet, all of this changed. At seat 26A, a piece of the aircraft is ripped out of the fuselage, leaving a gaping hole, and terrified passengers look out at the world below them. Immediately, an emergency is declared, and the pilots begin an emergency landing back at the Portland airport, with passengers capturing the terrifying footage and posting it online for the world to see. At 5:26 p.m., less than 20 minutes after their original takeoff, the plane touched back down at the airport, and by 5:34 p.m., the plane was back at the gate. Thankfully, during this incident, nobody was hurt, and better yet, nobody was dead. But Boeing was once again back in the crosshairs of scrutiny. This time, the plane in question wasn't the 737 MAX 8, but rather it was the 737 MAX 9. By midnight, Alaska Airlines grounded their entire MAX 9 fleet, totaling 65 planes. And worldwide, hundreds of these planes were grounded in total until mandatory safety inspections were completed. Within days, the stock value of Boeing had dropped by over 9%. But what was the true cause of the hole being torn into the MAX 9 plane? After the investigations that followed, it was revealed that there were no bolts installed on the door plug, which was torn from the aircraft. But what is a door plug? By default, when a plane is manufactured, it has a certain amount of emergency exits, which will be used, and those that aren't are then plugged in order to make sure that everything is properly sealed. In this case, the plug was installed onto the fuselage by a company called Spirit Aerosystems before being shipped to Boeing for final assembly and inspection. From here, Boeing was held responsible to ensure that everything was properly done, and of course, because of their previous history of cutting corners in the goals of financial gain, karma had struck. As a result of this incident, the CEO of Boeing, David Calhoun, submitted his resignation. But this wasn't the worst of the things to come. Following this most recent incident, old clips began to resurface from Al Jazeera when they had snuck into one of Boeing's many factories, where employees openly bashed the quality of their aircraft, and reports even began surfacing from old managers who claimed they would never fly on the planes built by Boeing. But the worst of all came when one of these former employees was found dead. John Barnett was a quality control manager at Boeing and had been working there for 22 years. And when it was announced they were opening a massive final assembly plant in North Charleston, South Carolina for its new 787 Dreamliner in 2010, he took the job. At a normal facility, someone in his role was responsible for 15 mechanics, but at this new facility, it was 50. Barnett claimed that these mechanics were amateurs, and when he complained to Boeing, they refused to do the right thing. In 2017, after 30 years working for the company, he retired and quickly turned whistleblower. In 2019, Barnett told BBC that under-pressure workers had been deliberately fitting substandard parts to the aircraft on the production line, and that he had uncovered serious problems with the oxygen systems, all of which could mean 1 in 4 breathing masks would not work in an emergency. He also made it clear that after starting work in South Carolina, he had become concerned that the push to get new aircraft built meant the assembly process was rushed, and safety was compromised, something that the company denied. And even worse, there were reports that workers had failed to follow procedures intended to track components throughout the facility, which allowed defective components to go missing and be accidentally replaced on planes. All of these claims were incredibly concerning, and so a case from the FAA was opened. At the time of his death, Mr. Barnett had been in Charleston for legal interviews linked to that case. He gave a formal deposition in which he was questioned by Boeing's lawyers before being cross-examined by his own counsel, and he had been due to undergo further questioning when he did not appear, and he was later found dead in his hotel parking lot in what was alleged to be a suicide, even though he clearly stated to friends and family if anything were to ever happen to him, he would never do it himself. Now, just to make things clear, this is not an official statement. Everything I say from here on out is clearly not what I really believe, and I'm definitely talking about a video game, and I really hope you're picking up on the sarcasm here. It was very likely that Boeing had something to do with the death of John Barnett. Allegedly. Through all of the evidence from Boeing's history, Barnett's family, and even Barnett himself, it's pretty clear that there's something sinister going on behind the scenes of this company. Allegedly. So why? Why wouldn't something like the FBI get involved in this? Why wouldn't the government investigate the true nature of Boeing's business practices? Well, they don't have to investigate. They already know exactly what's going on. And they aren't going to do anything about it because the US government needs Boeing. As one of the United States' largest aerospace manufacturers, Boeing plays a pivotal role in the nation's defense and military strategy. This relationship is crucial for several reasons. Firstly, Boeing is a leading supplier of military aircraft, including fighters, bombers, tankers, surveillance, and transport aircraft, all of which are essential for the United States to maintain its global military presence and capabilities. The company's innovations in aerospace technology have been integral in advancing the US military's effectiveness and technological advantage over potential adversaries. Products like the FA-18 Super Hornet, the P-8A Poseidon, and the KC-46 Pegasus tanker are just a few examples of Boeing's contributions that underscore its importance to national defense. Boeing's role in the US military extends beyond just supplying hardware. The company is deeply involved in the research and development of next-generation defense technologies, including unmanned aerial vehicles, space systems, and missile defense. This R&D investment is crucial for the future of the US military's technological superiority. Boeing's work in integrating advanced technologies into its platforms like stealth capabilities, advanced radar systems, and network-centric warfare capabilities is vital for maintaining the US military's strategic advantage. Boeing's relationship with the US military is not just about the product and technologies, it's also about economic and strategic resilience. The defense contracts awarded to Boeing supports hundreds of thousands of jobs across the United States, all of which foster economic growth and technological innovation within the domestic supply chain. Strategically, Boeing's extensive involvement in defense ensures that the US maintains an independent and robust capability to produce critical military assets, which reduces the reliance on foreign entities for national defense needs. This synergy between Boeing and the US military underscores a mutual dependency that is foundational to both the country's economic prosperity and its national security, which is why, despite any commercial airline accident, nothing will ever be done to harm Boeing. No matter how many people blow the whistle, how many incidents there are, the United States needs Boeing, and they are going to do everything in their power to make sure they stay on top. If this is my final video, you know who took me out. Allegedly.